Welcome once again, students. This is Dr. Mercado speaking. Welcome to Accounting 1329, Payroll and Business Tax Accounting. And we are continuing covering the content from Chapter 6, which deals with analyzing and journalizing payroll. Okay, so I hope by now all of you have read the chapter. That way you can understand and follow along what is it that we are doing. In this particular lecture, we are going to be covering problem 6.5a. Okay, so let me go ahead and jump into the problem. Okay. Now, in this particular problem, we are going to be journalizing payroll entries, okay? So, problem 6.5a states the follows, okay? The employees of Denali Music Company earned total wages of $4,690 during January. The total amount is taxable under FICA, FUTA, and SUTA. The state contribution rate for the company is 3.6%. Okay. The amount withheld for federal income taxes is $685. They're asking us to journalize the payment of the monthly wages and record the payroll taxes. Okay. So there's two entries that deal with payroll. The first one is actually paying our employees. Okay. We need to figure out how much have our employees earned. Okay. The deductions that we have to do. In this case, the payroll deductions, which is our FICA taxes and our federal income taxes. In this particular case, they don't provide us with any additional withholdings, like for example, if they have medical or dental, anything of that nature. All of those deductions would have to happen in this particular entry, in my regular payroll entry, but we're not provided with that information. The only thing that we have to worry in this particular problem is our FICA taxes and our federal income taxes, okay? So this is the amount that we are going to deduct from the employees' paychecks to cover their portion of the taxes. Okay, so we are deducting the employees' portion of the taxes in the first entry. In the second entry, we have our payroll taxes. Those are the taxes associated with the expense the company incurs for having the employees work for them. Okay, so the second entry deals with payroll taxes that the employer needs to pay. Okay, so let's start off with my regular entry. The first one that we are being asked to do is to journalize the payment of the monthly wages. Okay, so in this particular case, usually we have a date. They're not giving us any dates here when the transactions are happening, so I'm going to leave that blank. Okay, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to debit our wages account. Okay, now in most of the organizations that I've worked, the account is wages expense. Okay, and that is what I would use, wages expense. In this book, for this textbook that we're using, they only use wages. Okay, so I don't want to confuse you putting wages expense, because then when you do your homework, you're not going to find the word expense on your Cengage. Okay, so in reality, what the account wages is an expense account. Okay, but I'm just going to keep it as how the textbook explains it. So we're going to keep it just as wages. So just remember that the account wages is wages expense, and it's an expense account. So how much did my employees earn this pay period? Okay. If we remember from your either Accounting 1303, which is your Introduction to Accounting course, or from your Accounting 2401, your Principles of Financial Accounting course, okay, an expense account has a normal balance of a debit. Okay, so we should be familiar with debits and credits by now. Okay, so wages expense, which is what this account is, has a normal balance of a debit. Okay, so how much did the employees earn? My employees earned $4,690. That is an expense to the company. Okay, the company has to pocket out $4,690 to pay their employees. Now, that is the expense entry, the debit entry. Now, what we need to do is we need to take away from those wages the withholdings for FICA and federal income tax. Now, that money that we're going to withhold does not belong to us, to the business. No. That money, we're going to grab it from the paycheck. We're going to put it into a holding account, okay? Because we owe that money to different taxing entities, okay? So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put that money into a corresponding payable, okay? Anytime you see the word payable, it means it's a liability account. Okay? We owe that money to someone. Okay, that is not my money. we owe it, we need to pay it. And depending on the type of entity, we can pay it monthly, we can pay it quarterly, but the money needs to be sitting there for when we're ready to pay, we just grab it, take it out, and make the payment, okay? So the first one that we're going to do is my FICA, and these are credits, so they have to be indented a little bit, okay? FICA taxes payable, okay? And we have to categorize them because we want to keep the money separate for each tax, okay? Remember, when you're doing your journal entries, the debit always goes on top, the credits follow, okay? Now let me make this a little bit bigger. That way, let me hide the date because we're not going to use the date. We're just going to do the journal entry. Okay, that way I can actually do my calculation in here, okay? So, to calculate my FICA taxes payable for OASDI, how do I do that? Well, I know that my employees got paid $46.90 and my OASDI rate is 6.2%, okay? So, we've already been calculating OASDI all semester long, so you should know or be familiar with the OASDI rate by now, okay? So, we have $46.90 times 6.2%. That gives me a tax of $290.78, okay? So, I'm going to take that money and I'm going to take it out of the paycheck and I'm going to put it as a credit because remember, this is a payable, this is a liability account, okay? Next, I'm going to have FICA taxes payable. But now we're going to do HI, okay? So, once again, we're going to get the wages of $46.90 and we're going to multiply it by 1.45%, which is my HI rate, okay? So, let me get my calculator. So, we have $46.90 times 1.45%. And that gives me 68.005. Be very careful. That third digit is a 5, which means I'm going to round up to 68.01. Okay? 68.01. The other withholding that we have is the employee's federal income tax payable. Okay? Now that amount was given to you in the problem. Federal income taxes of $685, okay? Let me put all of this, there we go, okay? Okay, so now we know that our employees earned $4,690. I'm going to take away $290.78 for the OASDI. I'm going to take away $68.01 for the HI, and I'm going to take out $685 for the federal income tax. Okay, so now we can figure out how much cash we're actually going to pay out our employees. Okay, this is what they're actually going to take home. So my employees earn $46.90 minus $290.78 of OASDI minus $68.01 of HI minus $685 of federal income tax. That means my employees are going to take home $3,646.21. Okay, $3,646.21. This is the take-home amount, okay? So this is the gross, $46.90. This is the net, $36.46, okay? The net pay is after deductions. Gross is before deductions, okay? So that represents my payment of monthly wages, this first entry, okay? Now my second entry is record the payroll taxes, okay? This is the expense that the company, the business that you work for, has to pay for having employees, okay? So we're going to have payroll taxes, and in all of the places that I've worked before, it's called payroll tax expense. In this textbook, they're just using payroll taxes, okay? But just know that the account payroll taxes, just like wages, are both expense accounts, okay? So we have payroll taxes, okay? Now, I do not know how much my payroll taxes are going to be, but I know that my payroll taxes have a debit balance. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put my account there, and I'm going to leave it blank, okay? And then I'm going to start putting in my credits, okay? So what does the employer have to pay? Well, the employer has to pay the FICA taxes, okay? And we're going to put that in the OASDI. We're going to combine the OASDI taxes, the employee portion and the employer portion, and put it together into one account, because when I make my payment, I'm going to make my payment for the total amount, okay? And that would be the 4690 times my 6.2%, and that would give me 290.78, okay? The employer also has to pay FICA taxes, okay? And I'm going to put it into my payable for HI, okay? And that's going to be my 4690 times my 1.45%, okay? And that's going to give me 6801. So it's the same calculations as up here. What the employee gets deducted, the employer has to match, okay? The employer also has to pay FUTA taxes, okay? And we're putting each of the taxes that we're pending to pay into a payable. Why? Because we're not paying it today. We're going to pay it next week or next month. I don't know when. So if the money is going to be put into a holding account, it needs to be put into a payable account. That way we can identify that that money does not belong to us. That money, we need to pay it to a third party. Okay. So we have our FUTA taxes payable. Okay. And our FUTA taxes payable. And the key here, look what it says. The total amount is taxable under FICA, FUTA, and SUTA. So that means that my total wages has not surpassed any of the limits. We have to go back and remember that some of these taxes, like FUTA, is only assessed on the first $7,000 of wages. SUTA, it depends by the state. In this case, they're making it very simple. Everything is taxable. Okay, so because everything is taxable, I am going to go ahead and I'm going to get the 4690 and I'm going to multiply it by my FUTA rate of 0.6%. Okay, remember, FUTA is a net tax of 6 minus my credit of 5.4 gives me a net FUTA tax of 0.6%. Okay, remember, we've already covered that. 6 is my tax minus I get a credit of 5.4. That gives me my 0.6. Okay. So I'm going to get my 4690 times my 0.6%, and that gives me $28.14. And remember, this tax is used to administer the federal and state unemployment program. This is not used to pay out benefits. This is just used to administer the program. Okay? So the employer has to pay FUTA taxes and SUTA taxes. So the problem says that everything is taxable for SUTA tax purposes. My state unemployment tax rate is 3.6%. So we're going to go ahead and multiply by 3.6%. And let's see what we get. So 4690 times 3.6%. And that will give me 168.84. Okay. So these are the 4 taxes that my employer needs to pay. Okay, the employer needs to pay OASDI, HI, FUTA, and SUTA. Okay, now that I've got my 4 amounts calculated, I can add them up. 290.78, 6801, 2814, and 168.84. That gives me 555.77. That represents my payroll taxes expense. Okay, 555.77. Okay, so what does that mean? Okay, that means that me, as the employer, I am the owner of Donnelly Music Company. Okay, I have to pay $555.77 in payroll taxes to have my employees work for me. Okay, so this is an added cost. On top of the wages that I pay my employees, I also have to pay payroll taxes. Okay, so those are things that we need to consider when we're hiring employees. Okay, yes, I'm going to pay them X dollar amount, but how much am I going to pay in payroll taxes for that employee? Okay, so these are the 2 entries that you need to do. One of them is to journalize the payment of the wages, which is the top entry. And then the bottom entry is to journalize the payroll taxes. Okay, I'm using Excel here. What I just like to do, and you can do this with your calculator, just make sure that your debits always equal your credits. Okay, that way you know that you are in balance. Okay, always make sure. I just have that habit of making sure, you know what, I've done all of my entries. Make sure that my debits and credits equal. That way I know that my transactions are in balance. and it just gives me a little bit more peace of mind. Okay, so it's just the habit that I have, making sure and confirming that debits equal credits. Okay, so these are the two entries that we have for problem 6.5a. Please read over your textbook, and if you have any questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to contact me. So that is it for this lecture. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week, and until next time, bye bye.